So I think it's easy sometimes to think that we mean a lot to our students, and and we enjoy feeling that praise and hearing that praise from them. But it's also really easy to flip it and realize how much they mean to us. And I'm going to have Jordan and Kinsey out in just a few minutes. I just wanted to say a little bit about what they mean to me, and all it takes really is for me to imagine what the last 3 years would have been like without them. It's kind of interesting that 4 years ago they were on opposite ends of the country. One was in Florida and one was in California, with no sense that they were going to come to K-State. Fortunately, Jordan comes from a K-State tribe, and he eventually was called back here after doing college out in Florida for 1 year. And Kinsey, I met with her parents not long ago, and her dad insists that she was watching a baseball game in Bakersfield, California, K-State versus Cal State Bakersfield, I guess. And the K-State players were immensely handsome and won her over. The last 3 years of my life would be so different without them, and so I have nothing but immense gratitude for the handsomeness of our baseball players. And the reason why they're here is because they've produced a documentary in my class in which students move into a retirement community. They move into Meadowlark Hills, and after 4 months of 100 hours of interviews, Kinsey and Jordan created this.
My sophomore year of college, I became a resident in a retirement community.
Through interviews, I wanted to discover where meaning was found in the lives of a previous generation. Instead, I entered their story.
I was born November the 12th, 1931.
No, I was born in 1934.
I was born in 1923.
I was born in 24.
Mother had all us children at home. Doctor came out and delivered us.
We were all born at home, no hospital.
I was born and raised on a farm.
Middle of the road, dryland farm. Dad always kept it up.
That was a very innocent time of my life.
I did not realize that it was the Depression. Everybody was poor, but we didn't know we were all poor.
Dad said that he made $5 a day.
And my dad lost the farm. I mean, food was scarce. You have to gather eggs and work in the garden. As I said, milk the cows.
We grew corn and wheat.
And we didn't even have electricity.
I wasn't very much for doll play.
We made mud pies and playhouse, you know.
We would go out in the haymow and climb up the top of the barn.
I'd go real quiet across there. And I'd get to the apricot tree that was right there, and I'd skinny down the apricot tree, and I'd take off to the northeast so Mama couldn't see me. And I'd go play, play, play.
I went to school at Vermont School.
Country school set on a little knoll out there. Nobody had to go more than 3 miles.
Well, we had one teacher that taught all the kids.
I wanted to play in the big swings, run under them with the 7th and 8th graders, and I got hit on the back of the head with this swing and split my head open, you know. But that was me. I always wanted to do something above my level.
We went to high school, right? Rowan Rural High School.
Oh, there were a few sparks flying in 7th and 8th grade.
I just thought she was the prettiest thing that ever came down the road.
Crazy Jack Nesper. He just must not have a brain in his head.
I played football in high school.
And we met and danced. And sometimes we went to have Coke or coffee, went down to Agville.
Well, anyway, went on through high school, and
I married high school sweetheart.
But once you think you're in love, you don't think all the details.
When he got his orders to go overseas is when we decided to get married.
It's 1944. I was 21 years old.
I was 22.
I was 19 and a half. Decided on Sunday to get married on Monday, and he had to leave on Tuesday.
Oh, the war was so terrible. He went over about failing the Battle of the Bulge, because that's when we lost so many soldiers. They were short-handed, I guess. And I was just thinking the war was over. I was ready to die. Mom came in, she said, I was 3 months pregnant with our oldest daughter, and said, our next, said, the war could be over with. She said, you could have a baby by next year. And said, and I started getting better right away. because I thought I had decided I had something to live for.
Our early 20s, we had 3 children. I had never given any thought really to what the responsibilities of fatherhood were.
He'd been through World War II, and he had GI Bill, so he was going to school. And I had to stay home, cooking and washing and ironing and all those good little things that a housewife does.
That was a packed chunk of time of my life. Then my kids were moving on and into college. So that was another transition of life, a situation I hadn't been in, well, since before I went to college, because my children had moved on.
Anyway, when you're older and retired, we travel 300, maybe 400-mile days. And
Went on trips and traveled, and
it was just so enjoyable to just spend more time smelling the roses.
but their health and everything began to slow down.
I had fallen on the ice at home, couldn't get up.
He lost his balance and fell.
I fell and broke my hip.
Stumbled on the chair and he fell and broke his arm. So I immediately called 911.
So boy, I called and said, well, Lord, I want to come as quick as possible.
And I ended up here.
The first thing I do when I wake up is I have to stick my finger, take my blood, take your first shot of the day. Then there's the pills, combing my hair, brushing my teeth, eat my complete breakfast. Probably sit down in a chair and fall asleep. Go down to eat at 11:15. If there's anything to do in the afternoon, then I do that. Supper is sort of the same thing. After that, play my game. And that's the end of the day.
I didn't know the stroke is coming.
When you're a caregiver for a long time, it runs you down. He went to sleep that night and never did wake up.
And he died the last part of January. He just died in his sleep, basically. He just looked like he always did. But you can't get him back.
That was hard, because I really, really missed him. Boy, I missed him. It just hit me that way. He wasn't here. But
I had a real good friend come and say to me, you know, Marilyn, there's a fine line between laughing and crying. And when you cry, no one knows what to say to you. But if you laugh and make a joke about you or your spouse or something in life, then we all laugh.
to live in this world,
You must be able to do 3 things.
To love what is mortal,
To hold it against your bones.
knowing that your own life depends on it.
and when the time comes,
To let it go.
let it go.
Is there anything else you want to say to the two 20-some-year-olds sitting here listening to your advice?
To the 2 20-year-olds, I would say I would be happy if they could be my children. That I have loved them to death and they would make perfect children.
Kinsey Wade and Jordan Thomas, come on up.
You just watched a whole semester of our work from living as full-time residents in Meadowlark Hills in 8 minutes. That's probably not quite as extreme as watching a whole generation's life story in 8 minutes, but we think it's probably worth talking about.
So what you watched really only scratches the surface of the experience itself. What's real to us is the process behind it. What's real to us is finding this perfect spot of grass, laying down to film, then realizing it's stinging nettle and running screaming back to the car. What's real to us is scarfing down donuts at 4 in the morning, editing film in the lab.
Or checking the time every night to make sure we wouldn't be late for our nightly match of dominoes with our new friends.
So really, it's the process worth talking about. And we couldn't talk about that without our third partner, the McJordan Cam. And we were getting these really intimate and personal interviews, and we needed a way to express that in video form. And the result was the McJordan Cam, which kind of works like a third arm. It comes out of your stomach, and you screw the camera on the top. And I was knocking things off shelves. I hit him in the face a few times. But the result was really intimate and personal footage where the viewer can walk with us as we're walking through the lives of the residents.
But before we were even able to start worrying about filming, we had a lot of other things to take care of. So each of the live interviews usually took anywhere between 1 and 4 hours. Then we would log the interviews into our computers, typing out the rich and important points, which usually took about double that time. Then we got to research and contemplate the meaning of life, decide the life trajectory we wanted to portray, code for life categories we wanted to capture, cross-reference for different life categories, combine different interviews into life story. Then came the filming, combining audio and video files, and the editing, re-editing, 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 and re-editing.
All of that was done with absolutely no experience in gerontology, interviewing, videography, or editing.
And we were able to do all of this because it was real to us. The relationships that we had were real. You can't sit across from someone talking about the meaning of life and their own death unless the relationship that you have with this person is real. So becoming an actual part of the lives of the residents of Meadowlark Hills was the most important part of the underlying process.
But that didn't start out so easy. So the first day that I walk into Meadowlark, I'm holding this notepad in my hand, and I'm feeling like this new anthropologist who's descending into the jungle. And within 3 seconds, I am ambushed by this woman. And this is Helen. So she approaches us, and she has a pink bow in her hair. She has a brightly colored sweater on. But she just starts throwing questions at us. Like, why is your hair like that? Why do you kids dress like that? Why do you kids always have your technology out? And the next couple of weeks, I'm walking down the halls, and heads turn and whispers start. And I realized that I was a student in a retirement home, and I was about to be studied just as much.
But the semester moved along, and soon we'd be coming home from class and finding bags of cookies outside of our room. Or we'd be rolling out of bed early on Tuesdays and Thursdays to catch breakfast with the biscuits and gravy bunch. Or like on my birthday, for example, I opted to eat cake and drink punch and play board games instead of going out to Aggieville. And eventually they even stopped whispering about the two of us walking down the hallway together, and they started letting us in on all the who's dating who talk. So really, we were just caught right in the middle of all those nice little life dramas that keeps life interesting.
But with a real life experience comes real life depth. So there was one time where Jordan and I were standing in Ramona's room. And if you've ever been to Meadowlark, you know that Ramona's kind of the puzzle lady of Meadowlark. And so we're standing there kind of turning around looking at all these glass cases that are surrounding her walls. And in those cases are eggs, and they're just beautifully decorated, like little music boxes with horses and dancers that spin. And she kind of pulls us in, and she tells us the story of her husband, the egg decorator. And as she tears up and she puts this little quail egg in my hand, I look over at a picture of him on her side table, and I fall completely in love with him. That's the power of storytelling.
And I met Bonnie during my first couple weeks living at Meadowlark Hills. We were playing Rummikub, and she was teaching me all the skills and strategies to the game, and probably let me win at least 10 times. But one day she invited me up to her room, and when I showed up, the first thing I noticed was that her room was just full of boxes. And so I ignored the clutter at first, and I sat down with her, and we got to talking. And finally, I just asked her if she wanted some help unpacking. So immediately she perked up and said, yeah, she'd love that. So I got to work moving things around, taking things out of boxes, putting things away. And what I came to realize was that each box was just chock full of stories. So an old piece of polished driftwood, for instance, would take her back to a summer picnic beside a river with her husband after the war. And sometimes it's hard to explain exactly what it was like living as a resident in Meadowlark Hills. But hopefully this can help you understand what it was like one morning when Bonnie came down to breakfast and half her forehead was covered with a bruise. And she explained that she had fallen that morning when she was trying to answer the phone and gotten a concussion. And the doctor hadn't told her if she was going to be okay yet. And I think it was really in this moment that I realized that we weren't there just unpacking stories, but we had actually become active parts in this greater story that's just continuously unfolding around us. So in education and academia, we quantify and we categorize the world. This is necessary in order to make sense of things, but it's important to remember that these categories are tools. They're not reality. And by living as residents in Meadowlark Hills, we had the opportunity to step beyond this box of categories.
So it's good to be able to work within a curriculum, but the next step is learning how to go beyond it. As students, Jordan and I do hundreds of projects a semester. We're stuck in curriculums and we're focused on grades. But by spending a semester beyond this curriculum, we learned how to question what we were interested in and to go into the world in search of answers. Thank you.